So, I have done a guide for every single fully evolved legal Pokemon for VGC 23 Series 1, and these are the final rankings. I gave each Pokemon a ranking as I did each of the guides, and these are the final results. This video is going to be a slight update for what I think I got wrong on my first impressions. It is unlikely that my very first impressions of a Pokemon is going to be spot on, especially because there's almost 200 of them. But yeah, this is going to be a slight update video. I'm not going to be explaining why I am ranking each Pokemon as I am, because that would take far too long, and I've already given my explanations in the guides. So if you are interested in why a specific Pokemon was given a certain ranking, then please go and check out the guide. I do explain in those. It would take far too long if I explained almost 200 of these in this video. So I will just give a snapshot of the Pokemon rankings that I've given. So this is the S and the A. This is B. This is C. And this is D and F. Now, I accidentally put Alolan Dugtrio and Girafarig in when I was putting this right, so just ignore them. I should also mention that these are not ordered within the tiers, not even the S's. I don't necessarily think that Garchomp is the best Pokemon in the format. This is just a general order. It tends to be the me scrolling through my videos to put them in the correct rankings. So don't read into anything in the order-wise, because it is not necessarily ordered within the tiers. So rather than going through and justifying each of the rankings of every single Pokemon, I'm not going to be doing that. That would take far too long, and I've already done it in the guide, so go and check them out if you're interested in individual Pokemon. What I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be going through the Pokemon that I think I overestimated, and then move them down. And then I'll be looking at the Pokemon I think I underestimated and move them up. And then I'll go through a couple of Pokemon that may be surprising for some people as to why they are in the tier that they are, and I will go and justify why I think that is. So, starting off with Raichu. I think it is now a B. So, initially, I did put it as A because Fake Out is very good and not many Pokemon get it. It's got Lightning Rod as well, which has been very good in previous formats. But I think the Lightning Rod is not as necessary in this format. It doesn't seem like there is a lot of electric type attacks going around. There's only a couple. So Lightning Rod would be useful here and there, but that would be one of the main reasons to run Raichu. So I don't think it is as necessary anymore. Fake Out's still very good, and Raichu would be a perfectly viable Pokemon on any team. But I don't think it is a fantastic support Pokemon in this format. I think it's just going to be a very good one. So Raichu is going to be moving down to B. I definitely overestimated Quaquaval. Quaquaval should be in B. So initially, looking at Moxie and the fact that it could Aqua Step and give itself a speed boost while potentially giving itself a Moxie as well, seemed to be very good. And it seemed to be fast enough to make use of the Aqua Step, while also being able to Swords Dance and be able to potentially sweep through teams. Now I don't think that Swords Dance is as necessary on Quaquaval, because the boost in attack comes from getting KOs. And that could be a little bit awkward with the Quaquaval, because Aqua Step is okay damage, but it's not the strongest. If you do get the KO with Aqua Step, you are sorted, but I don't think it is going to be as strong as I thought it initially would be. It does have sweeping potential, but I think it had more I think I gave it more sweeping potential than it actually does have. Definitely still has it, but not to the extent that I initially thought. Next up, Arboliver is going down to B. So I still think that Arboliver is an entirely reasonable Pokemon, but maybe I put too much emphasis on the Throat Spray set. I do like Throat Spray, and I'm a bit biased when it comes to that, but Throat Spray isn't as necessary on the Arboliver. It makes it's able to do actually reasonable damage, but the point of Arboliver, probably, in my opinion, is to be a Dondozo check. So then you don't need to be going for the Throat Spray Hype Voices as such when you are trying to check Dondozo. And it can do it perfectly viably. Like, it can turn into a fairy and be immune to the order-ups, and then be able to just Leech Seed and Strength Sap it forever, because they're going to be healing back to full with Strength Saps when they're +2, and then you're going to be slowly reducing their attack. They can't order up the Arboliver, so you can't get that attack boost back, and then you should be sorted in that regard. So it's still perfectly fine, I just don't think it's as strong as I initially gave it the credit for. Bellibolt is unfortunately going down into B. So again, I still think Bellibolt is a very good Pokemon, but maybe not as good as I initially thought. The fact that the charged up electric type attacks were so strong was persuading me to A, but then the thing that I think is putting it down to B now is the fact that you have to have taken those hits to get that strong. And obviously that's not a good thing, because if you're taking hits, you're getting closer to being KO'd. So it can still definitely do its job perfectly fine, and you can do a couple of cool things, like Bulldoze itself in Trick Room, and then you activate a weakness policy while activating the Electromorphosis, and then your electric type attacks just KO everything. But Yeah, I don't think it's... I thought it was going to be very splashable onto teams initially, and it doesn't seem as splashable as I thought it would be. Glamora is not a Nihiligo, so it is going down to B. That's why I was persuaded more towards A, because Rock and Poison can be a very good typing. There are some Pokemon that just fold to Nihiligo. And Glamora is close to a Nihiligo, but not quite. If Glamora had Trick Room, like Nihiligo does, it would shoot straight back up to A. But it doesn't, and has a very awkward speed stat. So it's one of the awkward ones where it's like in the 80s, where it's too slow to be a just dedicated Trick Room sweeper, but it's also not fast enough to outspeed most of the common things. So it's in the middling speeds here. It's very strong, and its ability is really cool, and the coverage is actually better than Nihiligo, while being stronger than Nihiligo. You don't get Beast Boost, but yeah, the speed is the thing that's holding it back the most. Even with the fact that it can be a Nihiligo, technically, that can just get rid of its ground-type weakness, I still think it is weaker than Nihiligo was. Because no Beast Boost, not as fast. Like, Nihiligo was a good speed tier, and Nihiligo did get Trick Room as well. Glamora does not, so it is slightly worse and is going to drop down to B. And joining it will be the Tauruses. Both of them, unfortunately. So, Intimidate is still a good ability. People are saying that Intimidate is dead. It's not dead. Definitely does seem slightly weaker, but that does not mean it's dead. It's still perfectly fine, but not so good that Tauruses would be immediately A. They can do some cool things as well with the Anger Point. That's a bit more gimmicky, but they can still do other things as well. The speed is good, the attack stat is good, the coverage is good as well. So these are perfectly fine Pokemon, but not quite A. I'm still think they would be like B+, but not quite A, because Intimidate, while still good, is not as necessary as it was before. So those are the ones dropping down from A to B. There is one dropping from B to C, and it is Mabostiff. Again, similar logic to the Tauruses. Intimidate, while still being a very good ability, and I'm still going to be adamant on that fact, while still a good ability, is not as necessary, and Mabostiff can do some reasonable support, but there's other Pokemon that can do very similar support, and you just might as well use those instead. So unfortunately, Mabostiff is going to be dropping down into the C rankings. So those are all the Pokemon that I think I overestimated initially. Now I will be going through the ones that I underestimated. So starting off with Farigiraf. So Farigiraf, I saw it initially as just, this is a Pokemon that's going to set up Trick Room and not do anything itself. And I completely ignored the 110 special attack stat. And I completely ignored the fact that it could Throat Spray the Hyper Voice. And I'm really annoyed at that, because Throat Spray is one of my favourite items, and I missed that set. That's going to push Farigiraf up to B for sure. Armortail itself is just a very good ability. And Farigiraf has the stats to back it up, so it should definitely not be a C. It is at least a B. I don't think it's an A at all. It's definitely going to be a B in my opinion, because it can actually do offensive damage in the Trick Room that it sets for itself. And I didn't initially see that. All I saw was, this is going to be like an Oranguru, where you just set up Trick Room and help the party. Whereas Farigiraf can set up Trick Room and potentially sweep in its own Trick Room, while being somewhat fast enough to be on a fast mode as well. So yeah, Farigiraf is going to be moving up in the rankings there. Also, Palafin is a Pokemon that I saw initially as close to a gimmick, and definitely it's super busted in singles, but in doubles, having to sacrifice the turn to definitely get the switch in so that you can get the hero form seemed like too much of a commitment for me initially, but it may not be. Like Palafins, if you're putting it in Rain, just OHKO things with Jet Punch. With the priority of Jet Punch, it can OHKO some things. The stats are very, very good when it goes into the hero form, so even if you just go for a flip turn with a regular Palafin, if you've got it Choice Banded or something like that, that's still going to do a little bit of a reasonable chunk, and then Palafin comes in and just bodies everything. So this is just a late game sweeper that I didn't give it enough credit for, because I thought that the extra turn that you have to do to get it into the hero form was a bit too slow for VGC, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Lycanroc is going to be moving up. Only this one. The other two are staying in C for sure, but it seems that running this with Tyranitar is still entirely justifiable in this format, and spamming Rock Slide is a good thing. So it's moving up to B, because Rock Slide is good. Rock Slide is good VGC. It can also do the Endeavor stuff, and that's good against things like Dondozo. Like, it's a reasonable Dondozo check to be able to Endeavor. I think that if Dondozo wasn't a thing, Lycanroc would be still close to a C, but the fact that you can be a Dondozo check as a rock type, while still being able to do your thing of spam rock slide, it's going to be moving up slightly. So, and it does seem to be picking up on some teams as well. Like, it's not an unreasonable usage of Lycan Rock. So, yeah, it's going to be moving up there. Also, Pormot. Pormot, I think, was put as a C, because when I gave Pormot the initial ranking, Iron Hands was still being used. Because we didn't have the official format at that point when I gave Pormot the ranking, and then it was just, why don't you just use Iron Hands instead of Pormot? I know there's Revival Blessing, but just use Iron Hands. And now there's not Iron Hands, so Pormot is a lot more reasonable in this format. I would say it's closing in on A because of Revival Blessing, but I'm going to say high B. I know I haven't ordered these in the tiers, but just to represent that, I think it's closing in on A instead. Because, yeah, no Iron Hands, so it's the electric fighting type now. Pretty fast fake out, can still do some very good damage. Like, its attack stat is entirely respectable with 120 base power stab attacks, so the damage is there, and Revival Blessing is pretty cool. It's going to be nice on some strategies for sure. Not necessarily on every team, but every team would benefit from it. There are some that are going to be like benefiting it from the most, like for example on a Dondozo team, then being able to revive that for a second round, that's going to be very good. But Pormot is going to be incredibly splashable onto a team, thanks to Revival Blessing. You don't even need to run Revival Blessing, you can just go for the full support otherwise, like with an Assault Vest, and go all nuzzling things as well. So yeah, Pormot, definitely underestimated it, but that was because of Iron Hands instead. So yeah, Pormot close to an A. Maybe closing in on A. We'll have to see. So this is the Pokemon that I got the most wrong. But that's because it was the very first Pokemon that I gave a ranking to. So Meowscarada is an S tier Pokemon. And it was the very first Pokemon that I did rank. So I think I was a little bit hesitant to give it higher, because I did think it was potentially an A. It seems like it is an S though. But it was the very first ranking. And I didn't want to give Meowscarada a higher ranking than it probably should have been. And then I have to rank everything else that's actually pretty good lower than I expected. Because Meowscarada was the very first Pokemon. That was almost the baseline for what I was going to be doing for the rankings. But it's better than, like, even better than I initially thought, while still being tentative with its ranking. Because I thought it was probably an A, and gave it a B just because of the initial tiering. But yeah, it's an S tier Pokemon. The Flower Trick is strong enough. The speed is going to push it into the S. If it was a bit slower, it would probably drop down to A. But being one of the fastest, probably the second fastest reasonable Pokemon in the format, Dragapult's the fastest, and then it's Meowscarada. I guess Talonflame to an extent, and Weavile. But generally one of the fastest Pokemon in the format. That helps it out a lot. The bulk is mitigated by that you can just run a Focus Sash and all that. The Choice Banded set is very strong as well. And it also gets fancy things like it can just set Trick Room. So even though it's super fast, if you catch the opponent go for Tailwind, you can just go for Trick Room as well. Meowscarada is definitely an S tier Pokemon. And that was quite surprising. I did think it would just be a solid A, but the fact that it is this good is quite surprising. I guess because it can crit through the Dondozos as well with Flower Trick guaranteed, that might push it over the edge as well. But yes, Meowscarada is definitely an S tier Pokemon. And I find it quite funny that I said that Quaquaval was probably the best of the starters, and now I think it is the worst, because I am also moving Skeledirge up to A. So the fact that Unaware is going to help you a lot against Dondozo is very, very significant. I initially wrote that off because, oh yeah, Water is super effective against Skeledirge. And I just didn't factor in the Terastallization so that you can just be a type that is good against Skeledirge, and then you beat it because you just Will-O-Wisp it, and then you win. Because you're unaware and they're burned, so you are sorted. And it can also snowball quite effectively as well. Torch Song is a very strong move. Like, poor Volcarona being stuck with 50% chance to increase special attack with Fiery Dance. Skeledirge has it guaranteed. And the typing is very strong as well. The bulk is very good. The ability is very good. It's got reliable recovery. So yeah, Skeledirge, much better than I initially thought. Definitely not an S. So Meowscarada is the best starter. Then it's Skeledirge, then it's Quaquaval. And I think I had that completely reversed on my very first impressions. So yeah, I'm definitely eating my words when it comes to that. So, Dondozo and Tatsugiri, I will combine them together as one Pokemon, even though they're technically not. If Tatsugiri was on its own, it would probably be A, but it's with Dondozo. Unfortunately, it is one of the strongest pairings that we have in the game, so it's got to be S. It's a duo that you must have an answer for in team building. If you don't, you lose. You get swept by Dondozo. That puts it as an S. If it is that warping of your team building, it has to be S. Because you must be ready for it. There's only been a few Pokemon in VGC history where it's you must have an answer, else you are just going to lose the match. Like Xerneas back in 16 and 19. If you didn't have a Xerneas answer, you lose. If you didn't have a Calyrex Ice Rider, answer in Generation 8, it would just sweep you in Trick Room, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So you must have answers for it. Those put them as S-tier Pokemon, and following that logic, Dondozo / Tatsugiri has to be that as well. Also, I'm not sure why I put Goldengo as an A. Like, it was clearly S, and I think I was being tentative as well with the Goldengo, but it's just one of the best Pokemon in the format. And I don't know why I didn't just immediately commit to that. It clearly was S. Make It Rain is a busted move. Good as Gold is a busted ability. Go Steel is a busted typing. Like, Goldengo has pretty much everything it needs going for it. So it's clearly S. And it's definitely one of the best Pokemon in the format. Like, again, not tiering within the tiers, but yeah, Goldengo is easily one of the best Pokemon in the format. And looking back, I have no idea why I put it as A first, without just putting it immediately in S, because like, it's obviously one of the best Pokemon in the format, for sure. So, those are all the Pokemon that I'm moving. This is now the rankings that I think it is. So once again, I'll give you a snapshot. This is my updated S and A. This is my updated B. This is my updated C. And this is my D and F. And continue to ignore the Alolan Dugtrio and Girafarig, please. So, some Pokemon that probably might be surprising to some people. I've got 5 of them here. Baxcalibur is an S-tier Pokemon. People are starting to use it. Like, it's picking up on tournament results. It's won a tournament now. It's definitely an S-tier Pokemon. I was hopeful that it was an S-tier Pokemon when I initially gave it the ranking. Then I played with it, and it is absolutely an S-tier Pokemon. Some people are not rating Baxcalibur in the slightest. I have no idea why. And I've only generally run the Icicle Spear loaded ice set. There's loads of other ways you can run it. The one that won the tournament was a Swords Dance Glade Rush set with a Super Berry. You can turn it into a water type to be immune, not immune, to resist the steel type attacks that's coming its way that would be super effective. It doesn't have to be the electric type, even though I think that the loaded dice Terra Electric set for Baxcalibur is one of the strongest Pokemon that we have in the format. It can run a load of other sets. It can Swords Dance and Ice Shard things at priority with Stab. And then Glaive Rush is also a very strong attack as well. So yeah, it's very flexible in how you would want to run it. And it is definitely an S. Like, if you disagree, you're wrong. That's the one I'm most adamant on. Baxcalibur is definitely an S-tier Pokemon. And I will not hear otherwise. So, Glaceon. Glaceon probably surprises some people up at A, but it's the similar reasons for Baxcalibur. You can turn it into an electric type and get the bulk beam coverage just like Baxcalibur can. And it's got the bulk to back it up now. Because you can just, even though Ice is a pretty poor typing, offensively it's great, but then you keep that offensive typing, getting Stab on your Ice Beam / Blizzard, while turning into a better type, whether that's Water or Electric. And then you're sorted. And then you can just Calm Mind, get the leftovers for recovery, and then Glaceon may win the match on its own. Like, you can treat it very similarly to a Sylveon. They can both go for Calm Mind, boost up their offensive prowess, and they're both very strong offensively. Sylveon does get the spread in the Hyper Voice, and Fairy is a good typing regardless. So Glaceon probably benefits from Terra more than Sylveon does, even though Sylveon definitely does. Glaceon would need to Terra more, and it doesn't get a spread attack either. Again, unless you're going for Blizzards with the Snow, which you can do. In my head, I'm generally going for the Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, because that's the most splashable. But if you pair this with Snow, then you get to go for those spreads in Blizzards, which is matching the Hyper Voice strength. So that would be perfectly good as well. And if you're in the Snow, you get the defense boost while you are Calm Minding your special defense boosts, and then you're sorted, because you're super bulky. So yeah, Glaceon. Hidden gem. Use Glaceon. So that is going to be one of the more unexpected ones, I would assume. Tinkerton, also. Tinkerton is a very strong Pokemon. It's a very strong support Pokemon. Some people are disappointed that it got 75 attack, given that it got Gigaton Hammer, such a strong attack. But that is perfectly balanced. If Tinkerton was any stronger, it would jump up to S. Like, if you could just OHKO things with Gigaton Hammer, that's not balanced. That's just a ridiculous thing to be able to do with the best type in the game. We've already seen Zacian was so busted with the best typing in the game with a move that just OHKO things. We don't need that. Tinkerton can do a lot of damage with Gigaton Hammer. It doesn't need to just pick up OHKOs, while still being a fantastic support Pokemon. It's got Fake Out. That's already a huge plus for it. It's got other nice supporter moves that it can go for, like Helping Hand. It can go for Encore. It can go for Feint. It can go for Thunder Waves. It can do other supportive stuff very well as well. Like, Tinkerton is a good support Pokemon. People would have wanted it to be a damaging Pokemon and just Gigaton Hammer OHKOs something. But this is a support Pokemon, and it is a very good support Pokemon, because it's got reasonable speed, It's got the offense thanks to Gigaton Hammer, and it's got great support moves as well. So Tinkerton, definitely going to be an A tier Pokemon. Some people may have put it in B, but it's definitely going to be an A tier. Another A tier that might surprise some people, Appleton. Appleton is very, very similar to Garganical. So both of them would want to go for Iron Defense and Body Press. Both of them have Recover. And then both of them have a move that just chips away at their opponent's HP. Salt Cure for Garganical and Leech Seed for Appleton. But Appleton's chip away at the opponent recovers itself as well. So then it stacks on top of the recovery that Appleton can get. The ability is the best on Garganical. Purifying Salt is the best ability out of the ones that Appleton and Garganical can run. But Appleton can run Ripen with a Super Berry, or with the Citrus Berry, sorry. The Gluttony is the Super Berry one, but it gets Gluttony as well. So you can run the Super Berry with Gluttony, the Citrus Berry with Ripen to give just 50%, the old Super Berry healing, or just be Thick Fat, and now you're not weak to, not as weak to Ice anymore, and you just tear it into something that is slightly better against Grass and Dragon, because Grass and Dragon can be a very good typing. Some Pokemon can't break through Grass and Dragon. Like, a Garganical often turns into a Grass to kind of match Appleton, and it's already a Grass type, and then you can tear it out of that if you need to. So, Appleton is going to be very similar to Garganical. I think overall, just about Garganical is better, but Appleton is very justifiable onto a team as well. Final one that I think that people might be surprised at is Medicham. Medicham has not been very good in previous formats, unless you go for the Mega Medicham, and even then it only really had like one proper placement. I mean, that was finals of a international, but yeah, Mega Medicham seemed pretty good. So regular Medicham, why would you use that? It's now got close combat. That's the thing that pushes Medicham up, while also now having Trick Room as well. That's the big one. If Mega Medicham had Trick Room, that would have been so good. But we had to just deal with Medicham now. Medicham gets close combat, you don't need to risk high jump kicks, so that's a reliable fighting type attack. And Trick Room is very good for it, because it's in the 80 speed tier, but that's a good thing for this Medicham, because it's going to be fast enough to make use of just going for spamming close combat. It's fast enough to make use of a Tailwind, while being able to set Trick Room for itself. That's what Glamora was missing. Glamora is just a bit faster than Medicham, so it would make use of the faster mode better, but it can't set Trick Room. That's what the big thing is for Medicham. It can set Trick Room, so it's going to be able to support as well as going for Fake Outs. Again, Fake Outs very good supporting move, while being able to Trick Room and do huge damage. A close combat coming from Medicham hurts. A Fighting Terror Medicham can Oko a Garchomp. It's really strong. So Medicham, that's a Bronzong. Medicham is a very, very strong Pokemon in this format, in my opinion. That's going to be a hidden gem. So that's going to be it for this, for these updated tierings. Like I said, I'm not going through everything because it would take far too long, but those were my initial thoughts, and this is now what I think the tiering is for Series 1.